Good morning mga ka-watchers, welcome to my channel. I am your Sir Nikolai, and today we are going to talk about literary criticism and theory. Okay, so what is literary theory and criticism? So take note, there are two words that we have to define here. The first one is criticism, and the next one is theory. So what is criticism? So there is a misconception here, because every time we hear criticism, we always think of something negative, something that is, adversarial and destructive. But the word criticism is not always about finding the negative aspect of a certain text. Criticism, of course, comes from the word critic. And if you trace the etymology of the word, it means able to discern. In Greek, it means kritikos. So in other words, criticism is the act of discerning and interpreting a certain text. And if you want to have a scholarly and valid interpretation of a certain text, you need to use a theory. So what is a theory? So a theory is a description of the set of principles of the tools that we use every time we interpret or analyze a certain text. So it is the roadmap of a literary critic to prove a particular claim. So to have a valid interpretation, like what I've told you, you need to use a theory. So the question now is, anong theory ang dapat natin gamitin? So in this video, I will give you 4 examples of theory. Okay? The first one is formalism. So formalism is a kind of theory that focuses on the text and not on the writer, nor the social, political, and historical dimensions of a certain text. All right, and the first process here is the first step is to extract the literary elements. So, ano ba yung mga literary elements na ito? Okay, so these are your, for example, characters, conflict, and in poetry, you have your, meter, rhyme, figures of speech, etc. So this is the first step, is the extraction of the literary elements. And after the extraction of the literary elements, you have now to determine whether these elements are interrelated and connected. So this is called the organic unity of the text. So for a formalist, the only time they can consider a text beautiful is when these texts have connections, if there is an organic unity. So for example, okay, so let's say a literary, a formalist, bibili siya ng kotse. So anong gagawin niya? So the first thing that he will do is he will check the elements of the car. All right, titingnan niya kung ano yung mga elements, the body or the shape of the car, the paint, the engine, and also the tires. And second, he will check if these elements or parts of the car ay meron siyang connection, if they are functioning correctly, or if they are interrelated and interconnected. So kung yung engine ay hindi siya nakalagay dun sa tamang lalagyan, let's say and yung passenger seat, instead na nasa loob ng kotse, nasa labas siya, nasa bubong, pangit na kotse yan. So hindi natin dapat i-consider yan as a beautiful car. And the next one is, you have to check whether these elements are in their rightful place, and whether these elements are functioning efficiently and correctly. So same thing with text, right? Kung isang kwento walang character, and kung ang isang kwento, kung may character nga, wala namang characterization, and if kung may characterization man pero hindi naman connected yung characterization doon sa story, we cannot consider or call this story as a beautiful story, because it is incomplete and the elements are disconnected. So that's the first one. So the next theory that I'm going to discuss is archetypal criticism. So the concern of an archetypal critique is to extract the archaic and mythological structures of a certain text. It is based on the theory proposed by the psychologist Carl Jung. And for him, the stories that we encounter, today, the modern stories, are actually reimaginations and reinterpretations of the ancient stories, the ancient narratives of our distant past. So these archetypes are actually the manifestations of our collective unconscious. These are primordial structures and they are very old. So for example, superhero stories such as the story of Superman and Iron Man. So instead of looking at the form of the character or the aesthetics of the film, or the the style of the author, if it's in written form, an archetypal critic will look into the mythological counterparts or the basis of that particular character. So Superman can be parallel to, let's say, an archetypal character or mythological character such as, let's say, Samson, Marduk in Mesopotamian mythology, or an archetypal critique, since Superman marami siyang mga extra human qualities, we can conclude that the character of Superman is a conglomeration of all of these characters. Okay, so if your interpretation is like this is called archetypal, and this is psychological in nature. Okay, the next one is deconstruction or post-structuralism in some books, and sometimes this is na nag-overlap siya doon sa cultural poetics or new historicism. They're actually related. So let me give you an oversimplification of this theory, because this is a very difficult theory. Okay, and this is proposed by Jacques Derrida, a French philosopher, a literary critic, and his assumption is that the words are inadequate in telling something meaningful. So let me repeat that one. Words are inadequate in telling something meaningful. So for example, the statement, time flies like a bird. Time flies like a bird. For a traditional critic, this is a figure of speech, a simile, because there's that word like, diba? That's basic. But for a deconstructionist, the word flies in time flies like a bird may be understood as a noun, not a verb. The plural of insect, fly, and the term time flies means a kind of fly, a time fly, plural, time flies. So kung tatagalogin mo, oras na langaw, gusto niya ibon. And that's nonsense. So for deconstructionists, literature is nonsense, since it is inadequate in telling something meaningful. The end goal of a deconstructionist is to destroy the foundations of literature. So if you want to appreciate the beauty of literature, you will not use this theory, all right? Because you will, magagalit ka, at saka you will hate literature if you will use this theory in interpreting and viewing these texts. All right. So what is the significance and importance of literary criticism? What to do with literary criticism? So let me explain first. If literature is a reflection of the society, and if literary criticism is the extraction of the realities embedded in the text, then learning how to critique a certain text will enable us to see the realities of this world and have multiple perspectives of those realities. So in other words, we will have a lot of options. And ang gagawin na lang natin is to choose what is the best perspective for a particular situation. Right? It would be beneficial in our part. If you reach this stage, it means that you like this channel, so you hit the subscribe button and watch out for my next videos. See you next time, and au revoir.